saying he was too nonchalant about his cats running away.
Yeah. And then he's...
Welcome to Sex and the Solo Girl. Join your host, her inner circle, and expert guests weekly for chats about dating, secure attachment, the solo lifestyle, doing relationships differently, and of course, sex. And here's your host, Janice Formicella.
Hey everyone, welcome to Sex and the Solo Girl with Janice Formicella. I'm so glad that you're here this week. We've got a really fun episode for you, and it's an episode that I would encourage you to grab a pen and paper for, because today I am here with my good friend and fellow coach, Lena Ehrenberg, to talk about dating mistakes. Hello, Lena.
Hello, Janice. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, feeling good. I like this topic a lot. Lena and I have been doing an IG Live series on dating mistakes, and now we are going to be putting it into a couple different episodes. If anyone is not following us on Instagram, please go over and do so. The info is in the show notes because we're going live quite regularly, and we've been having a fun time with that. And if you join an IG Live, you can ask us questions in real time. So head on over. So dating mistakes, Lena. I'm not sure who decided to run with this topic, but why is it something that you've been enjoying talking about?
I've been enjoying, well, to be fair, I've been enjoying talking about dating mistakes and how to avoid them.
Yes. So we're not just telling you what you're doing wrong. We're helping you, yes, to prevent them.
Nor are we going back in our histories and dwelling on what we've done wrong in the past. That's the part that's so painful, right? And so that's why I've been really enjoying talking about all of it, because sometimes we can just start sitting in what we feel like we're not doing right. And it's really hard to get out of that from there. So I like the forward movement of, hey, we've all been there. We've been there in different ways. We've all done something. There's always something we need to either learn or learn to do better. And so that's where we're at. Y'all want to be dating, y'all want to be in relationships, and y'all deserve to be in really good, happy, healthy relationships. So let's do that.
Yes, and relationships that are joyful and interesting from the beginning, regardless of whether or not it turns into something long-term.
Yes.
Along those lines, today we are going to be talking about pre-date mistakes and how to avoid them, and first date mistakes and how to avoid them. And then Lena and I will come back with part 2, and that will be in the early days of a relationship when you have decided to continue on. Before we start, when it comes to dating mistakes, how do you know if you should take heed? How do you know if that it's time to tweak things? The reason I'm excited about this episode is because simply I hear so many people say that the proverbial, there's no good people out there, there's no good men, all the women want the same thing, online dating sucks, and a lot of people who are out there feeling really defeated. If this is how you feel, I implore you
good word. I like it.
Take a look at yourself and how you're showing up, the patterns, and commit to trying to do things a little bit differently, because It's not true that there are no good people out there. It is not true that online dating sucks or doesn't work. It's the opposite, but it takes some strategy and some, like I just said, self-reflection and some willingness to, like I said, mix things up a little and do things a different way. I always like to say to people, as far as what they're doing online, their refusal to do things differently or to experiment, I always like to say, how's that working for you? Okay, well.
Right. And here's something that I always like to say too. If you're telling the same exact story about everybody you've ever dated, as in all of them,
yeah.
Right? If you're looking outside of yourself and it's the same exact story, there's 8 billion people on the planet. It can't be all of them. That's when you have to really be honest with yourself and say, this is about me. I'm the constant here. What can I do to take back my power? What can I do to have control of my own life? Because there's a lot that you can do about it. And when you're just outward focused, you're robbing yourself of that opportunity.
And we are also going to talk about some internal things that some people think that are outside of their control, but they aren't. And we're definitely going to get to that. For instance, we're going to be talking about the spark in a little bit. And some people think, that that's something that's just inherent in them. But I digress. Cool. Let's talk about pre-date dating mistakes and how to avoid them. Okay. My first dating mistake, pre-date dating mistake. Don't write a story before the date. Don't write a story about what is going to happen with this person. Do not write a story about how much you click, how great they are, what your relationship may end up being like. Writing a story before the date sets an expectation for how things are going to go that can be easily burst. You can be let down horribly when you do this. It will affect how you communicate with this person on the first date. It will prevent you from seeing the red flags, and it's just a recipe for disaster. One way that we write a story is, of course, in our own mind, just getting more and more and more revved up about meeting this person and telling yourself over and over and over in your head how great the DMs were, how hot this person is, how sweet they are, and telling your friends. So this is a two-pronged mistake.
Oh, yeah.
Writing a story and enforcing that story by going around telling all of your friends about how great this person is, how excited you are to meet them, how likely it is that this is going to turn into a relationship. And when you tell your friends over and over, you replay the story over and over. And like I said, it's easy to get disappointed, but also it prevents you from just being in the moment and getting to know this person for who they are. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right about that. And you made me think of someone I used to work with who came in one morning and was telling all of us, in the coffee room about this amazing person she had met. And she just knew that this was the one for her, and on and on and on. And I said, oh my gosh, that's so great. How long have you been dating? And she said, oh, I just met him last night. Met. And if you see my face right now, that I'm sure that was the same face I had. I went, oh, but she made me really evaluate how often do I do that?
Okay.
And so now I have a rule for myself, which is I don't mention anyone that I've met until we've been on at least 4 dates. So that's kind of like, and if you figure 1 date a week, or that used to be I don't know. But for me, it's kind of like a combination of how many times have I been with this person over what period of time? And do I now really, honestly, in the minute, I love that in the minute. I'm going to say that now. Okay. Do I say, right now, for real, what do I think? Do I think I'm going to continue to date this person? And then I'll start to talk to people about them. But no, not before then.
I encourage my clients and my friends to obviously tell someone if you're going on a date. Someone should know where you are. And it's okay to be excited about meeting someone. That's completely different from writing a story about it. But other than that, tell one person so that you're safe and that you have some bubbling going on underneath the surface. But please leave it at that. And along the same lines, we're talking about pre-date, but after the first date even, I would say still keep it to yourself as much as possible. It's, like I said, okay to tell your friends that you're excited, but to go and tell everybody that you just met someone that great and he's a great guy and, sweeping you off your feet and like you finally met someone, it's not a good idea. I had a friend do that recently. And when, you find out more and more about a person a month, 2 months in, and when you have built it up in your mind so much and told all of your friends how sure you are about the relationship, when you decide to walk away, it's just that much more disappointing.
And you just made me realize something when you said that it's harder to see the truth about that person or even just the relationship. It might not be that this person is not a good person, but this person might not be a good match for you, right? So there just might be conflicts that are going to be coming up in this relationship that are not right. But if you've already decided that person is it, this is the mistake that we all make in one way or another. You're not seeing it. You've already pre-decided that this is the one. So then that's all you're filtering for, right? And so stuff is going to come up and you just won't be able to see it and evaluate fairly.
And if you are telling your friends about it, going on social media about it, there's a likelihood that if you decide to end things, it's also going to have an element of embarrassment to it. I mean, let's just be real. I just recorded an episode and dropped it called "What Was I Thinking?" With Julie Dempsey, Jessie Marie, Christine Lalonde, and we all kind of told an experience about looking back and saying, "What was I thinking?" And I did mention that in my case that I had dated someone for the first time in a few years, and I had put something on Facebook, not right away, but I don't know, maybe a month in. And it was probably like the next week that I decided I didn't want to go out with them anymore. And I bounced back, but I was like, oh my God, I just barely put on Facebook the other day.
Oh yeah. And yes. And and we think a lot about social media right now, but you're making me think back to college. And for me, that was pre-social media. Thank God. Because what was I thinking? So there's also something about if you've pre-decided, you don't know what this other person is thinking about you.
Good point.
And you are putting a lot of pressure on that person. And so it might not be simply that you later decide to break up and then you're embarrassed. How many times have we thought things were going along great and all of a sudden that person's gone?
Yeah.
And we might not necessarily know why, but sometimes the reason might be not, and then, if any of you is like me, it was always about what did I do, because we don't know what it was and we start making up stories. And unfortunately we make up negative stories about ourselves and it devolves into he or she or they just didn't like me. What's wrong with me? La, 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 la. Then it's all about everything, right? I'm just wrong. I'm not lovable, all of that. But it could simply be that your posts or you're telling all your friends, especially if you share friends, or if you're just going in there with the energy of, I've already picked you, that's putting a lot of pressure on them. And they could be backing off just because of that.
I was going to say it's energetic. When you are putting so much weight into the success of the relationship, and the other person can definitely tell when you're trying to hurry things along. I try not to use this word on the show very much, but there is an energy of desperation that is really, really, really easy to pick up on. And the person who's experiencing the pressure might not even really realize it, but it is not a good energy for the early days of a relationship or when you've just barely met someone. If you're trying to connect with them, let it authentically, organically happen rather than placing this story and this expectation on the person.
Right. And the way that you can do that, I think, is, and everybody's free to disagree with me, and heaven knows a lot of people have disagreed with me, but I think it's really, really lovely as a way to form a connection with someone, to start to form a bond with someone. That's what we're all looking for in the early days between two people, to say, I love, oh my gosh, that's another thing we have in common. I really love that we have so many things in common. Or, you know what? Or if somebody tells me a funny story or something, I'll say, I like that. I really like you. I mean, I think it's really lovely to confirm and affirm to the person when you're liking them, so that you let them know, right? But there's as you go along, because, our other people look to us too. Other people are just as nervous as us. Other people think that they don't date well just like we do, right? There's always, we're all humans.
I date well.
You date a lot better than a lot of other people, but if that's the story that you might have about yourself, it also behooves you to know that other people in the world feel maybe similar lacks in themselves, right? So all I'm saying, but the difference is, here's what I'm saying. Affirm and make a connection and be kind and be generous with that person. That does not mean saying, I've already decided that you're the one for me.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to say that's not being kind and generous. That's imposing something upon them. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Right.
Thank you. And I know that just as far as a little anecdote from my own life, I went on a date with someone when I was living in Australia. He, I guess, was quite smitten. I didn't necessarily feel the same way. The next day, he's texting me saying that he wants to buy me a computer because I had mentioned my computer sucked. And get this, then I get a text from him. Oh my God, this is so cringy. So first he's saying she is sexy as fuck, and then that he was going to marry me. And he had meant to send it to his friends, and he sent it to me. And I'm telling you, boom, I never saw him again. I thought that was weird.
Yeah. So think about that. That's such a great example to have it, the example of what you felt, right? So
Yeah,
that's
exactly
what we're saying, y'all. If you are someone who's doing this to other people, think about how it feels when you've had it done to yourself, or think about how you just felt hearing Janice relate how she felt.
Yeah, no, it was not flattering at all. This is why also after the first date, texting immediately the next morning and saying, good morning, gorgeous. Hi, how are you? Thinking about you. That's also inappropriate because you've obviously already written a story about what's going to happen. Otherwise, why would you think it's appropriate to send a good morning text?
Okay.
I don't know. That's just me. Just me.
No. Okay. So I would like to jump in. Yes. Okay. So it's not appropriate to send a good morning text. Okay. I'm not, and I know a lot of people are like, hey, but whatever. No good morning text, no good night text. That's my intimate time. And people need to be invited into my intimate time.
Yeah.
Right. But what is lovely is to get a text the next morning from someone who says, I really had a great time last night. Thank you.
If you want to see this person again the day after text, hell yeah.
Yeah. So, well, either way, I mean, even if I've already thought, I don't know if I want to see this person again, it's really nice to receive that text. There are a lot of, and remember, I coach mostly heterosexual women. Okay, so I'm going to talk in those terms. There are a lot of women who say they would, the story that they tell themselves is, oh my gosh, I don't know if I said thank you last night for the date. I better text him thank you this morning. Okay, so that's a no.
Absolutely.
That's a no. So here's the thing. I love receiving those texts from men, and I've received many of those texts from men, men thanking me, but it was only after I learned to not be the one sending those texts. So here's the rule on the date. here's something that you need to do. I know we're not at first date yet, but here's the thing. Make sure that at the end of the evening or afternoon or whatever the date is, just make very sure you say thank you, especially if your date has, paid for something or whatever, even if you're not thanking them for paying for something, be sure that you have thanked them.
I mean, let's be honest though, the anxiety the next day to make sure that you said thank you.
No, not the next day. No. That's what I'm saying. That at the date.
No, hold on. So, and I'm just saying this to you. So I think that if you're honestly saying, oh my God, I don't know if I said thank you, I got to text him. You're really actually just trying to get some engagement going, don't you think?
Yes,
I mean,
that's
would you
what I'm
really
saying.
be nervous that you didn't say?
No. That's what I'm saying. That's the story that a lot of my clients have told themselves and told me. That's what I'm saying. Okay. So we are figuring out how to get rid of that story. Mm-hmm. And the way to do that is on the date, be sure that you say, thank you.
Just be classy.
Yes, and that's classy. So that way you don't wake up the next morning and tell yourself the story, I don't know if I said thank you, because it's part of, just like you're going to wear clothes, right? You're not going to go on a first date like, Lady
and
died.
Also, if you didn't say thank you on the date, I don't know.
It's not that big a deal. Well, yeah, but okay. So it's not that big a deal. But if it's, if it's part of the story that you tell yourself in order to send a text to, to spark some engagement, that's what we're here to help you all do, which is learn different ways to do what you've been doing so that you can create different outcomes.
Yep. And a good guy is going to follow up and take the lead, if you ask me.
Exactly.
We are going to take a quick commercial break. And then when we come back, we're going to chat about some first date mistakes and how to avoid them. I hope everyone's enjoying this, taking notes. A lot of you know that I am a breakup coach, but did you also know that I work one-on-one with singles to maximize their solo chapter of life? My program, Single and Secure, offers customized packages that include things like becoming securely attached, visualization and manifestation for the future, learning to embrace and love your single life, getting ready to date again, self-pleasure, preparing for your next relationship. Let's have a chat to talk about how Single and Secure can add fun and power to your life. Schedule your free intro call using the link at the top of my show notes. Welcome back, everyone. First dates. This can really set the foundation for what things are going to look like moving forward. This obviously is going to be your make or break scenario as far as having a second date. And I think that when we talk about first dates, it's creating more opportunity for you to connect with people. So let's talk about first date mistakes. Lena, go for it.
First date mistakes. Okay, I'm going to tie it into what we talked about earlier, which is maybe you've already decided and you're so into this person before you've even met them on the first date that you're not taking them in. You're not really hearing them. You're not really seeing them. And there's stuff coming up on a first date that you really ought to pay attention to. I had a lunch date with someone who, again, we had very nice conversation back and forth, and the texts or the phone calls, always a phone call before meeting someone in person. That's me.
Yeah, everybody, please pay attention to what Lena just said. I'm also a really, really, really big fan of the phone call. I think that if you can have a conversation with someone over the phone, that is not, hella awkward, that it's a good indication that the date may go well. And I just think that it's really nice to firm things up and confirm over the phone.
Yeah, but I also think that it's really important because you can get a lot of information by being on the phone with someone, hearing someone's voice, hearing them tell a story, understanding all of that can save you the heartache of going and meeting someone in person. Because I've had a lot of phone calls with people where I've said, this is going to be a no.
Yeah,
and
same.
So, but that's one way to not have to get into what we're talking about the next time, which is on the first date. How might it go sideways?
Oh,
right?
my Lord.
So,
Yes.
and of course, we can't always know. It's not 100%. We could get all the signals, all the green flags. I'm thinking back to a lunch that I had with someone who seemed very nice. And I was, thinking, okay, this is a possibility. Let's see what happens here. And then he told me a story about how he had pets and he also had a roommate. And for some reason, and the reason I can't even get this out of my mouth because I'm still hearing it in my head and still puzzling through why someone would tell you this, especially on a first date. But
Okay.
he started talking about how his roommate left the doors open and the cats got out. And like the first cat got out. And so he comes home hours later. I guess they had 2 cats or something and a dog.
Okay.
Now that it's coming back to me, he said, I came home hours later and I couldn't find one of the cats. And my roommate said, I guess I left the door open. Mm-hmm. And he said, and he acted like he didn't really think that much about it. But then a week later, he came home and it was the same kind of situation.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like with the other cat, like the cats had just run away.
Okay.
And he said, and it was just the way he said it. And I'm sitting there literally like this going, why would you tell me that? This is really upsetting to me. I am an animal lover overall. And I love cats. So
you're saying he was too nonchalant about his cats running away.
Yeah. And then I said, okay, wait, back up. Had you said anything to him after the first cat? Like, had you said to him, hey, could you keep the door closed? Anything?
That is weird.
And he said, and he kind of was like, oh, and so when I said that, so I didn't ask him that. I didn't say to him, but this is what I was thinking. This is what, honestly, and this is why I'm bringing this up. I was thinking, so as long as you still have the dog, you're willing to sacrifice cats, but the dog, so that's okay. Right? So it was.
I mean, he was being authentic.
Well, he was being authentic, but me. So this is the point of my story. It's weird, but it was so upsetting and it's still so troubling to me because
I'm sorry.
Well, but this is the point though. People show us who they are in certain circumstances. And if you are someone like me who has a value, a very great life value around life of all pets, he showed me who he was right then and there in that moment. And I knew it didn't matter anything else. I knew that was that. And yes, and to use your word, he was so nonchalant. Mm-hmm. But not only nonchalant, I'm like, who does that? Who tells such a sad, bad, negative story at all? Here's what I really want people to hear. Even if you're not, even if I wasn't such a great animal lover, think about the tone of the story.
Both of us are people who value positivity and the power of positive thought. And this may not be a fit if he is going around telling such gloomy, weird stories.
So I want to put this before you share yours. I just want to say to everyone who's listening, what kind of stories are you sharing on your dates? What part of you are you showing people very early on?
And have
really
some go-tos.
aware.
Have some go-tos. Yes. Mm-hmm. And I also call this the single person's portfolio, and that is to really load yourself up during the time that you are single, with hobbies, with things that you do in your spare time, while strengthening your friendships, going out and having adventures, so that when you do start dating again, you kind of have this whole arsenal, if you will, of things to discuss and things about you that are interesting. And maybe think of a couple stories that might be fun to tell. Lena, before we go to my first date tip, I also wanted to mention that something that came to mind when you were telling your story is also that there was a clear clash of values between you and this man. And that is something that you can pick up on a first date quite easily. And there are so many things where the two of you clash as far as what you value.
Absolutely. A huge mistake that I've made has been to not understand when something cannot be repaired, is not to understand, right? So when you are presented with someone who has a conflicting value with yours, we don't always have to all have the same exact values, but our values can't be in conflict with each other, because that is irreparable. And I stayed way too long in a relationship with someone who showed me pretty early on that not only did we not share a value about something, we had a conflict in a value. And that's what's always going to come around to bite you. And
in order to prevent that, you need to know what your values are. And that's a whole other thing. Oh, Lena and I did an episode on values in dating.
Yes, link to that.
Yes, everybody. It was a good one. And I think one of the reasons that was such a good episode is because you and I are two people who know what their values are and live like a life based on what those are. I mean, I have mine on my whiteboard so that I can make sure that my decisions are in line with what I claim to value. My tip for first dates is fuck the spark.
I love that.
I think that one of the mistakes that most people make, and that most people are trying to unlearn right now, or a lot of people are trying to unlearn right now, because in the dating coach space, this is, one of the biggest trends right now. And that is to encourage people to not go on the spark or the initial excitement or the sexual attraction that you feel with someone when you very first meet them, and to base your decision on whether or not to have a second date just based on these physical feelings or on an infatuation that you might build with the person when you first meet them. To prevent this mistake and eliminate the opportunity to connect with this person more organically, I will say, if you are curious about the person after the first date, and or you've had a great conversation with them on the first date, then it's a second date. Whether or not you felt the spark, I would just throw that out the window. Spark and attraction grows over time. And it really does not have anything to do with whether or not you and this person are compatible. So let's, throw that need away.
I'm with you, sister.
Okay. A lot of people believe that when you feel such a strong initial sexual attraction to someone, that something in your nervous system is being activated, which may or may not be a positive thing. Also, when you have an initial spark with someone, it's likely because there's something familiar about them that is making you feel excited and comfortable. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean that this is a person that you're going to have a healthy relationship with at all.
Right. And think about that, because if you are someone who is still trying to figure out how to have a good, healthy relationship, and you can look back and see that a lot of your relationships have not, what you don't want to do is go for what's familiar. Mm-hmm. Because what is familiar is what has, it's just perpetuating the same result over and over and over again. And you're trying to get a different outcome.
I did an episode with Julie Dempsey a month ago. Please, everyone, again, go to the show notes or just go up on the feed a little bit, because we did an episode called The Death of the Type. And that is, one of the biggest trends right now in the dating coach space. is, throw out your list, throw out what you think your type is. If you are on an app, go and look for people who don't look like anybody you would normally date, get to know people, and go for compatibility rather than just sexual attraction or what you're just simply used to.
Right. So what I say is that the two CH words, too many people look for chemistry, and what you need to look for is character.
Oh, that's cute. I like that.
I really look for character and values and traits in people. And that takes time. To your point, Janice, you just said that. It could take time for people for you to see really important character traits in people. But some of their behaviors will start to show you things immediately if you're open to them.
And this is another reason why I think keeping the first date short is also a good idea, because you get the ability to decide whether or not this person has things about them that make you curious or not, rather than just saying, oh my God, I'm sitting here in the moment and, my heart is pounding, and basing a decision just on that. And that's also why perhaps not sharing too much on the first date might also behoove you, because you want the other person to be curious about you as well. How do we date outside of our type? Like, where would you start with this? And I would also say some of these things you need to just practice. Just like you might not always go on a second date with someone who you don't feel the spark with. Just get used to it, practice, go outside of your comfort zone, lean into this, get to know the person for them rather than for the chemical reaction that you feel because, of your sexual attraction. Which exactly. I mean, really, when you think about it, it's a little bit, I'm sure it's, flattering that you would be attracted to someone, but I would rather go on a second date with someone who is genuinely curious about me after our first few conversations.
Yeah. I think also that a way to do that is to get accountability, because it's going to feel weird. It's going to feel weird. Mm-hmm. And when we feel because you said it, you have to go outside your comfort zone. So what does that mean? It means you're going to feel uncomfortable, which is why we look for what's familiar, because that's comfortable. So it's going to feel weird and awkward and uncomfortable, and what it's going to take. And I'm not saying you're going to suffer, but you're just going to have to get yourself past those little twinges of, this doesn't feel right. It's not going to feel right, right? So accountability, which is why coaching is such a great thing for people and why people are able to move forward and make strides in their lives and create outcomes for themselves that they might not have been able to create up until that point, because they've got someone who not only has tools and techniques that we can teach you, but also there's an element of accountability there. Or that might mean checking in with yourself, and you might just want to write a list, or you might just want to write a note to yourself. I'm a big one for have a note in your phone that if you start to feel really odd or weird or whatever, and you feel like maybe you want to leave, rather than leaving the place, rather than getting up and going home, go into the restroom, pull out your phone and look at your note. And your note might say, character, not chemistry. Your note might say, I am going to look for something I like about this person.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what my clients all know. When they've had a first date with someone, the first thing we're going to talk about at their next session is, give me three things that you liked about this person or about your interaction with this person.
Other than their physical appearance or the sexual chemistry.
That's totally off the table. They know that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beside the point.
That's beside the point, right? Exactly.
Look, we're looking for meaningful connections with people. And that starts with conversations and learning about your compatibility. And I already said this, but the more you get to know someone and connect with them and build a friendship and a curiosity about each other, that sexual attraction, it starts to grow.
Yeah.
And then you might have, probably better sex than you could imagine because you have such a bond with the person.
That's highly possible and probable. But also the other thing is then you're building a relationship on all of these other points and not simply on physical chemistry, because that is going to make for a stronger, healthier relationship ultimately than, because if you're with someone just because you're having hot sex with someone, but there's all these other issues that are not in alignment.
It's not the makings of a long-term relationship for sure. And I promise you, if you'll invest in your dating techniques, if you will try new things, if you will go outside of your comfort zone, you actually can, have it all. The sex, the intellectual connection. Oh, that just makes me think of that Alanis Morissette song, All I Really Want.
Yeah.
And at one point she goes, is intellectual intercourse a soul to make the whole much deeper. So go out there, everyone, get some intellectual intercourse. Start with that. And
yeah, that's what we should call this episode.
Okay, intellectual intercourse. Hell yeah. Okay. I don't think we use that expression enough. Intellectual intercourse. Oh,
right.
Yeah. Lena, thank you so much for all of your tips. We are going to come back soon and talk about what happens after the first date. Once you decide to see someone again, that's when, some strategy can come into play. That's when a lot of anxiety starts to build. That's when you have the opportunity to sow some really juicy seeds with a person. And when the emotions start running, we can also make a couple mistakes that might prevent us from a deeper connection. I think that's the word of the episode, connection. I'll have to count how many times I said it. Lena, thank you so much. I love having you on. It is Monday when we are recording, and it's a wonderful way to start my week. So
yeah, me too. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody who followed me over to Sex and the Solo Girl. I appreciate you so much. If you loved it, go to Apple Podcasts and leave me a review and let me know. If you're not enjoying the show, you don't have to do anything but push stop right now.
Love it.
All right. See everyone soon.
Thank you for listening to Sex and the Solo Girl with Janice Formicella, the podcast for those who want to add more flavor to their relationships with themselves and others. If you liked today's episode, make sure to head over to Instagram and let her know. See you next week.